Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Wait a minute. Now, wait a minute. I gave the no shenanigans promise.
No. See, that's what tripped me up because you said you have my no shenanigans promise, and so then my brain went to, oh, so there's gonna be shenanigans, and I got.
Yeah. See, I think I have you in a situation now where you think I'm gonna do something, even when I'm not. I'm a dove. I'm a dove. I come with peace. That's it.
It feels a bit like a Trojan horse to me, but that's okay. Happy Muse Day, Dan.
Happy Muse Day to you as well.
Hey, it's like we're having a day of fall. It feels like.
Yeah. This is my first flannel of the season.
The season.
Yeah,
I hear. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I have a window in here, but
Yes.
and I keep it open a little bit, even though it's a little cool, just because I like the fresh air.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
I do hear though that you will need to be putting that flannel away by week's end. So,
Really? Is it
that's
gonna
what
warm
I
up?
heard. That's
Nice.
what I heard.
Well, that's good.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm loving it. I am. You listen. I do love fall, but you will not hear me complaining about warm weather extended. And this is the only way I would complain is if it's just warm, and then snow. Then I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah.
Then I need to work on some of that anger stuff that was talked about this weekend
Yeah.
because that's no good.
Yeah.
But an extended warm spell followed by a fall and then a mild winter, count me in. I like it.
Good.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I will say, you said that we will not hear you complain. We might not hear you do anything because your voice is just barely there. I mean, it is.
The funny thing is so you know this, Mary knows this, Paul, Eddie, of course, and Greg a little bit because you all were with me, heard me on Saturday night for the run through, but then also Sunday morning. So people like like Rob Cedric, we saw Cedric today, and when they heard me today, they're like, when did you get sick? Because you weren't sick, on Sunday. And I'm like, oh, but I was.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were all praying for your voice before the sermon too. And we had the choir there. And so we had more people than normal praying. And it's possible that might have pushed something over the line.
Listen.
And because you sounded great.
I'm not going to dispute it because when even in the, we do that pre-service meeting thing where we just kind of click through the things just to make sure all the stuff is working. Even that, my voice was like not sounding awesome. And I was like, oof. And so when I got up there and I started and I was a little surprised. I was like, oh, okay, we can do this.
Yeah.
Now, I think the only telltale sign for anyone who really, really is just I took more drinks of water throughout than I normally do. And that was because I was feeling like things getting a little scratchy. And anyway, but yeah, I don't know, Holy Spirit, amazing technology. I'm not sure, but it worked.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Well.
So we closed out Love Is. And the final sermon of that series was, I called it Love Never Fails, which had nothing really specific to do with love is not easily angered, but I felt like it was a good bow over the entirety of the series.
I think it was.
And, yeah. I'm, and you know me, I'm not good at titles. So I went with what felt the best in the moment. So
yeah. Well, I think is that the cue for me to do the summary?
That was such a smooth cue that you nearly missed it. It was just so effervescent, so effortless that you just almost skipped right over it.
Right. Well, good, because I had to switch to the summary cam. So
okay, perfect.
Good. Well, yeah. So Love Never Fails, and I think it was a good title for the sermon, especially since it was the last one of the series. And but your specific focus was on anger, and I guess in my mind, when we were doing the series, when we were just planning the series, I kind of thought, well, it would probably be good if each person just called their sermon what Paul says in the text. And well, that didn't even last for week one. So, I mean, that went out the window right away. And I'm the only one who followed that. But the fact is that I think the titles that people had were good. And I think your title was great. And I like the kindness revolution. And it's, a little more jazzy. Now I feel kind of dull and mundane, but
no, you should have sat us down and said, listen, team, this is the way it's going to be for continuity's sake.
Yeah.
So that when people are looking back over this, they know exactly what they're going to get when they're hitting in these sermons. So you should have hunkered down on it.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I could see it both ways. Well, I'll just say I feel a little anxious about this summary because I feel like you really covered a lot of ground and you kind of went big picture, swooped in low, then swooped back out big, and you really hit a lot of stuff. And anger is sort of a complex thing. So I'm probably going to miss some stuff, but in particular, you were focusing on 1 Corinthians 13 verses 4 through 7, the part where it says that love is not easily angered. And so you kind of started off by summarizing the sermon series to this point, and which was great. I mean, I'm so glad at least two of us do sermon series summaries, and that helps to just kind of position everybody. And then you shared this verse that I thought was such a great verse, and it's Galatians 5:13-15 that talks about how we need to serve one another. We're free, but don't use that freedom to indulge the flesh and to just do whatever the heck you want. That freedom is there for a purpose, to serve one another, to love one another. And it just, and at the end there, at the end of that passage, it says, if you bite and devour each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. Man, that's a great verse to kind of set up this anger discussion, because that is what it feels like. It feels like people are biting and devouring each other on social media and on the regular media and just in families. And it's kind of cannibalistic. It's just vicious and nasty. And so I thought that was just a great verse. And it also kind of sets the table here about, look, we don't want that. We don't want the biting and devouring each other. What is the antidote to that? Well, the antidote is this love that Paul tells us about. And so you just make the point that it's important to take this seriously and start thinking about this and develop strategies to get more of what Paul is teaching and less of what our culture is teaching, because what our culture is teaching, it ain't working. And so we need to tell me more about this love thing, Paul, and so we need to start thinking about that. And the first kind of part of learning that love is not easily angered is to really kind of understand that anger by itself is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just our response to it is where we can get into trouble. But anger on its own is just a signal that, hey, there's something going on here. It's an alert that we have to take something seriously. And it's also dangerous because when we experience anger, we do feel like threatened or in danger, and so we tend to want to find who's to blame for this danger that we're in, and so that's why, because anger tends to alert us to threats, anger wants to, when it shows up, it wants to take the driver's seat, is I think the way that you phrased it, and I think that's absolutely right. And it's such an ancient emotion. It's just this primal kind of reckless emotion that wants to fight and strike others down and do whatever it has to protect itself from the threat that it suspects. And then the other thing you said, which I think is one of my favorite quotes from the sermon. Anger is often not the first emotion that we experience. It just happens to be the loudest. And I think that is so important because I think a lot of people have never thought to listen beneath their anger for the real emotion that's underneath it. And if people take anything away from this sermon, I hope that they really, set up a tent and camp out there because I think that there's some great wisdom there. Because oftentimes I think, and this is a summary of what you said, anger can be sort of a shortcut for dealing, instead of dealing with the real thing, we can just get angry. And there can be a kind of a pseudo catharsis that comes from anger, but it's not dealing with the real thing. And so then you offered 3 things to help us respond to our feelings of anger. And the first one being that we need to name the emotion, and not just the emotion of anger, but also seek to name the lower emotion as well. And that leads to a second one that means we have to be curious. We have to get curious about what's really going on here. It's good to get to, I don't want to say an age, but a state of maturity where you can experience anger and feel anger and say, wait a minute, I know what you're about. I know that this isn't the real emotion, and we can kind of look below that. And that takes that curiosity. And then the third thing is probably the most basic of the pieces of advice that you gave, and that is because of the power of the things we say, especially with our anger, it's important to just breathe before we speak. And it's a way of taking the steering wheel back from anger, because when you talked about anger wanting to take the wheel, I think the wheel is sort of our nervous system, and breathing is a way to kind of get control back over our nervous system. And then you closed the sermon with an exercise that I don't know where I was on Saturday, but I was just having a hard time on Saturday. I don't even remember this activity on Saturday, but and so when you were doing it on Sunday, I was just thinking, I didn't really. I'm like, I don't know about this. I mean, what do you mean you're going to put your name in the Bible? What are you talking about? But then when you did it, I was like, wow, that's really effective. And basically you just read through the 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7 passage. And where it said love is this or that, you just put Shawna is this or that. And you invited listeners to put their own name there. And so for me, I'm listening saying Dan is kind and Dan is not easily angered. And it created this opportunity to use one's own creativity to imagine being a better version of themselves. And because you'll never become that if you don't first have a picture of that in your head. And so I thought that was just a fantastic exercise to end the sermon with. That is my summary. Do you feel like I missed anything really big that I absolutely had to get in there?
No, you did it. No, sir, you did a good job. And I'm giggling because I did do that Saturday night, and we even talked about it as a group afterwards. Because remember, Mary and Paul were like, "Where did you get that?" And I'm like, I'm 1000% positive I did not create this. I know I have had to have heard it or seen it somewhere, and I just thought it'd be a good idea to help us embody this and blah, blah, blah. And then Paul even went so far as to say, well, you know what? I've never heard of this, so let's just say you created this. And I was like, okay, but I didn't.
Totally. Well, and it's funny too, because I was tired. I still am. I feel like really run down and just, I just need a day off or something. Or maybe I'm getting something. I don't know. Maybe I'll start talking like you later this week.
Maybe you will. Yeah. Maybe you will. Because
but you were talking, and then afterwards we were processing the sermon, and it was my turn to give my feedback. So here I come. I'm like, you know what would be really good is if you talked about that bumper sticker. Have you ever heard that bumper sticker where I think it goes something like, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. You should do that. And like everybody's looking at me like, where the heck have you been? She did that. That was there. You were here when she did that. So yeah,
Yeah. That was
I
a
felt
point. Yeah, that was
I
that was a
and
point. It's
I
okay.
was paying attention,
I
but
know you
it
were.
just
It's all
wasn't
right.
it wasn't working. That was the
Yeah.
problem. My
Yeah.
brain was the problem.
Your brain needs a break.
Yeah,
It's been busy,
it
busy,
has.
busy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for your summary. I will say typically the question is, hey, how did you feel about it? Did you say everything you wanted to say? Blah, blah, blah. And I will say that I'm my own worst critic, so I don't even like to go there, like how I felt about things. But this is what I will say. I will say that there are two things in particular that one thing I forgot to mention, and another thing that I just didn't really have space and time for. And the thing that I didn't have space and time for is whenever you're talking about anger, I should have, and if I had more time or if it were a different context, if I didn't want to close out the series the way that I did, I would have maybe spent a little time just talking about this is coming from the baseline of course, we're not talking about toxic behavior. Of course, we're not talking about, justifying that or explaining that kind of stuff away. I mean, and I hope people know, I feel like we've said that enough in several other places that I hope people know that. But let me just say for the record, if you are dealing with someone who has toxic or dangerous anger, like the moment to ask what's really going on here may not be the safest thing for you. So
Right.
please know we're not suggesting to put yourself in harm's way. And if you are behaving in a way that is harmful, we're not excusing that and just saying that's a natural emotion. No, you need help. You need some help.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the time to really get into that. And the other thing I didn't have time for, because it could almost be another sermon, is that tagline of if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. And I talked about how like we are kind of being constantly like motivated to stay in this angry state, but there are things that should
Yeah.
make us angry. There are things that we see or that we experience that something should rise up and say this isn't right. And so I did not have the time or space to get into all the different instances in which the feeling of anger is a good motivator to do something because there's just not
Right.
time to get into all that. And I was really trying to deal with love is not easily angered and the
Yeah.
pitfalls of anger and how to deal with it when we feel it instead of all the places in which it's a good thing, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, well, and that is sort of the balance because you don't want to be apathetic either,
Right.
and I think that's why your kind of focus early on is you kind of re-steered the ship to make sure that we realize that anger is not a bad thing. Anger is a good thing. It's just our response to anger is where we can get into trouble, and that sort of captures this idea that there are some things that if we don't feel anger, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So and so that's why I think anger absolutely is your body, your spirit, your soul is telling you that there's something wrong, there's something dangerous, there's something ungodly happening, and so I think anger is absolutely a good thing. And I also think
Yeah.
you're right too, where sometimes people can be dangerous, and being angry at somebody, or if they're angry at you, either way, um, I think, how should I say this? I mean, there's some things, I guess, if there's any type of threat of violence, or harm, there should always be more people involved. It should always
Hmm.
be a communal sort of
Hmm.
engagement, to
Hmm.
reconcile or to resolve whatever is causing the anger. And so I do think that that's important. But I also hope that, because of your focus on the easily angered, I think people will understand that. So
Yeah, I hope
yeah,
so. Thank you for
yeah,
that. Yeah, and we've talked a lot about I think the danger is, side note, you and I have so many conversations, teaching team and all of that stuff, and then MuseCast and stuff. So sometimes I don't remember where we've had conversations, but we have had plenty of conversations just about how we do live in a time where it's almost like I can envision like the wizard behind the curtain, just how can I get him today? Like we are just there's something at work that is trying to just keep us in this rage mindset, and I think it's important to be aware of that and to not get played by that. And I briefly mentioned it, but again, that could have been a whole nother 20 minutes of a sermon, honestly, just all the variety of ways in which we are being pitted against one another. And I was telling you guys about how I've noticed on certain social media sites that it's become very popular to monetize other people's rage, meaning I'll post something and saying, hey, this person did something awful to me. And I'll even maybe post a comment that someone said, and then people get angry at that comment. And then there's a bunch of back and forth discourse, but all of that engagement earns me views, and it earns me likes, and it earns me money. And so now I'm like, I think you're all playing like it's a weird place because I want to have empathy, but I'm not going to let you play me.
That's
because
right.
I've been played, and you get riled up, and then you realize this wasn't really a thing, or it wasn't as big of a thing, or it didn't need all of the rigmarole that came with it. And I just think we have to be careful because it's everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and now with artificial intelligence too,
My gosh.
starting to see some like absurd things, raccoons save giraffe from alligator pit, stuff like that.
Doing?
It's like, so it's, and that's what's really evil about that, Shawna, is that when the world becomes desensitized to these things because they have been played by the engagement farmers and by people who are using empathy and anger and all of these other emotions that are meant to stir our hearts toward justice and action, but instead they've been manipulated so much by these people who are self-centered and trying to build their platform. And what happens is we all sort of disconnect. We either literally disconnect from social media, or we become just numb to all of it. And then we miss out on the people who are really in need. And that's the real evil of it is the people to build their own platform and to seek their own attention. They're eventually going to cut off real help from people who have real needs, and that's tragic. And without I don't want to be a scaremonger or anything, but I don't think that people take those behaviors serious enough, because I think that we will have to account for that.
I agree.
Personally,
I do. I totally agree.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And that was all I had. I was mostly just.
Yeah, it's I think we do have to be careful. I think, and that's why I think that phrase "show them who we are" has resonated with me for so long, because we are called to be different. We are called to live this upside down type of kingdom, and it's Scripture tells us foolishness to the world, but that is our call. I mean, look at Jesus. If anyone had a right to be angry and to be proud and to be boastful, it was him. And he was like, "Yeah, I'm not about that life." I mean, he was way more majestic in what he said, but essentially not about that life. So, yeah, I think we have to be careful, and it's important. I had this like fear that people would be like, love it. What a little pansy series. No, this was good, and it was serious, and it's important, and we do need to show up differently and show that, like, be that city on a hill, that light in the darkness. So yeah.
Yeah, I think if we were to do the series over, I think I would have wanted your sermon earlier in the
Yeah.
series because and part of it just because, and I can't, and this is, I can't believe I didn't include that phrase in my summary that show them who you are, because that is sort of a foundation of when you were doing the summary of the series. That's such a great way of capturing what Paul is calling us to. It's not enough to just like think about these things. We have to show it and live it out. And what a great tagline for this series. But I even missed it in the summary. So there you go.
Okay, Dan, your brain's tired. Yeah. I have one more thing for us, and then we can skedaddle. But one thing that I am kicking myself for not mentioning, and it came from our time together. Now, you may not remember this, Dan, but in our time together Saturday night afterwards, and we were talking about that third point of breathe before you speak, Paul Eddy was even saying not only physically the words that we speak, but the words that we speak through our typing, because holy buckets, keyboard warriors are a thing, right? And I cannot tell you how many times, like, I've seen something, maybe it was an email or as a text message or as a post somewhere, and I'm ready, like, just to tell them what's what. And you got to take a moment. You gotta, whoa. And I did not include that in the sermon on Sunday, and I'm kicking myself for not. But I'm so thankful for MuseCast, so I could lay that here. But
totally,
that matters as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of that is so coordinated too, where I don't know if, just influencers encourage their followers to do stuff like that. And that's the thing. And one of my favorite things that Jon Stewart used to do on his Daily Show is he would show all those media clips from all across the country where these newscasters are saying the news item with the exact same words, like they were reading from a script. All these different news stations from all across, they're the exact same script. And yeah, it's powerful, and it's dangerous. And I also, this is unrelated. Now I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but
you're good.
I also thought this was really great, and I forgot to mention this in the summary as well. You had asked, how is your life spiritually significant? And again, I can't believe I missed that in the summary, because that I really think that's a great question for people to think about, because I think that when we think of spiritual significance, we tend to think of like Moses leading his people through the parted sea, and David, defeating Goliath, and in some ways, those are kind of easy, I mean, it's just this one big epic event, but what's hard is a lifetime of not being easily angered and being that steadfast presence of agape love in someone's life, and being a role model for the people in your community to see every day. That's what's hard. That's what spiritual significance is. And so I just thought that was such a great question. And I don't even remember exactly where that was in here, but I loved that.
Yeah, is interesting, because that is one of the parts that I struggled to say, because I love our church. I love our people. I love that they have hearts to do so many good things. Every time we have an ask, they respond. And I was trying to think through how to make this, again, more personal for us, make it more tangible for us, because it's very easy to read about the church in Corinth, and they're talking about signs and wonders and tongues and blah blah blah. And that's not our active that's not what happens actively in our service. Like that's not the stuff that we're dealing with. And so I was like, what would be the thing that we are proud of? What are some of the things that we hang our hat on? And it's well, we're a thinking church. We learn to love together. And so you've got the classes and the groups that discuss the sermons, and you've got SEM, and we're a giving church. And so you've got tiny homes and the tap and volunteer, like all of that. And it was really hard to say, these are all good things, but if we don't have love, then we're just making noise. And and but I'm like, but please keep doing those things because
Yes.
we need you to do the things.
Yeah. And children's ministry volunteers, if you don't mind.
We need you to sign up.
Talk about spiritual significance. Let me tell you about our youth program.
Like you don't want to like poo-poo the good stuff, but I was just trying to say, hey, this is this is something that we value, and just trying to put it on like the same playing field. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll edit it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's probably too late. Anyway, so that concluded Love Is, and thus concludes my voice, I think.
Yeah, you're almost
so
done.
we will be entering back into Revelation, looking forward to that. But I wanted to say, because I can just envision people thinking 5 weeks on love seems like there's more there. And you're right. But wait, there is more.
Yeah,
like an
that's right.
infomercial. But wait, there is more. So we are not done with the topic. We will be circling back. We just, we got some things to do. We got some Revelation to get back into. We got some Christmas, believe it or not, to get into. And so we will be circling back to love.
That's right.
All right.
All right. Is that
I think
time?
I think so, Dan. I think we've had while we still can.
Yeah, right. Have we ever had a MuseCast where both of us have fallen asleep halfway through? I don't remember. Can't remember.
If we go much longer, this will be that
It
one.
might. Yes, it might.
Cut to both of us like. But I'm going to ask if you would be so gallant,
gallant, whatever you want,
to Nugget first so that I can
Yeah.
recover my voice a little bit.
Sounds good. I'm on it.
Okay.
So my nugget is this. Well, I want to say two. I had two nuggets, and so I'll give you a little extra time. One of them is really quick. Just the point about the dashboard thing is anger is really, really good at diagnosing a problem. It is terrible at writing a prescription for a problem because anger has very limited prescription options. It's not licensed to give the right medication. It's really just good at saying this bad. But its only prescription is Hulk smash. That's the only thing it has going for it. So that's why it's so important to be curious and to look deeper and to let anger be an alert, but try not to let it get too much further than that. But my real nugget is this. I think one of the things that people that makes people angry or vulnerable to anger is their expectations, like how they expect things are going to go a certain way, and when their expectations fail, then they get angry because they expected this was going to happen and it didn't. And you see this anywhere, like when people are going someplace and they might even give themselves 5 extra minutes and they get stuck in traffic and they end up being late to the thing that they're going, even though they left 5 minutes early. Those are the types of things that triggers that anger. And so I guess something that's really helpful for me is to try not to have expectations, try to have goals, because expectations, there's a sense of entitlement there where it should happen this way. Whereas a goal is, this is what I want to happen. And it may or may not, but this is what I'm working toward. And so it's harder to get angry with a goal than it is with an expectation. And so my nugget is to have more goals, have fewer expectations. That's my nugget.
I like that. I'm going to steal from my own sermon. No, but I was I'm glad you mentioned this in your summary, the Galatians 5 passage, because that passage is one that I know I've read umpteen dozen times, as we say where I'm from. Um, and this was the first time I really saw the bits about biting and devouring and just that warning. And I don't know why I didn't see it before. I don't know. But my encouragement is spend some time with that passage. And even like some of you, we've talked about doing Lectio Divina, where you just read a passage slowly over and again. Because I think there was just, I don't know, there was just something, and maybe it was just me, but there was just something that just really struck me with that. And made it come to life. Like, I don't want to be a part of biting and devouring and destruction. I don't. And one of the ways to do that is to keep anger in check, to not be easily angered. And I love the way you said it, like anger, Hulk smash. I mean, really, there are very few options, whether you or whether you like and cut someone off. And like, because you had asked a question like, what about the person who just seethes in it and doesn't ever say anything? Like, I think that's just as damaging and destructive. And so we need to keep that in check. And so my nugget is just spend some time in that Galatians 5, those couple of scriptures. And here, I'll tell you exactly what they were. Galatians 5:13-15. Yeah. And just meditate on that. Let the Lord speak to you on that and hopefully help you. My hope is that it would inspire you. And so I'm just going to read it and then we can close out together. I should not be reading, but I'm going to read it. All right. You, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. If you bite and devour each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. And I want to be about lifting people up. I want to be about, serving. And yes, sometimes that's challenging and you want to, hold people accountable to stuff. But I don't want to be about destruction and devouring and biting. And so my nugget is meditate on that and see how the Lord speaks.
That's awesome.
That's
great. Well, and I'll just add to that really quick. The anger turned inward thing. There is a school of thought in psychology that that depression is largely anger turned inward, where anger has not been resolved, where you haven't found that deeper emotion and resolved that thing. And so instead of getting that anger resolved, it festers, and that festering leads to depression. And I think that there's some merit to that. And I don't know if it's in all cases, but I think there's something to that for sure.
That's a great point, Dan. And then that just leads me to say this final thing that of course, I did not say all that could be said or needed to be said about anger or dealing with it or processing it. And so there are some that anger is a real issue. And my encouragement is to get help. And there are so many good resources. Sometimes just understanding the emotion a bit more is so helpful. And and depending on how you express it and just, like all the things about what could be underneath that, the secondary emotions or whatever. I just think it's good. So there are so many resources, process, get help. If you're dealing with someone else, there are resources available, and I just want folks to know that.
Yeah.
All right. If they have questions, comments, suggestions,
well, they're
where should they
go
send
right
them?
Here. That's
right there. Yeah, MuseCast at whchurch.org. I'm not going to be a telephone operator anytime soon. So, Dan Kent,
yes.
I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope your brain gets a little bit of rest, and we will see you guys next week when we dive back into Revelation. Have a good one. Bye, guys.